Hello, my name is Genesis Varela. Thank you so much for reviewing my journal article video. Today I'm going to be sharing an article called Meeting the Diverse Needs of Students with Emotional Behavior Disorders in Inclusive Science Classrooms, written by Sarah Watt, William Therian, and Erica Kaltenberg. And this article discusses various topics, but it focuses on the need for special education teachers to be prepared to provide academic and behavior support for students with emotional and behavior disorders. And as you can see our title, it focuses in the inclusive science classrooms. And we're going to talk about why this is the reason. All right, so we're going to begin with the overview of the article. So the topics discussed include the hypothetical case of a sixth grader, Sam. So they provide a case study of a student that has emotional behavior disorders, and he was identified with EBD when he was in elementary school, and instructional supports are found to be effective in addressing the academic and behavioral tasks in students with EBD. As they provide the case study for Sam, the author provides different strategies to use with students with EBD when teaching science in an inclusive classrooms. So what we have here is that these students have difficulty in core academic skills. They play a huge role in the student's success or failure in science specifically. The acquisition and retention of core science knowledge for students with EBD is difficult because they often begin science units with less background knowledge than their peers. We know that when learning in a science classroom, there's a lot of hands-on activities, and for students with emotional behavior disorders, it's really difficult to focus. And as we know, students with emotional behavior disorders or EBD find it very difficult to control their behavior and focus on their work in the classroom. So if they're doing any hands-on activity, doing a lab or something, it's going to be really difficult for them because of their behavior and because they're not able to focus. It also says, the third point, students with EBD struggle with acquiring and retaining critical knowledge because of difficulties with core academic skills and behavior. So again, connecting the behavior and the skills and how they are affected in the classroom. And here we have a picture of a student, and we have the students in the background, and it looks like the students are actually making fun of the student in the front. The student in the front looks like they're frustrated, and this is a visual representation of what a student with EBD would look like in the classroom. All right. So the author's perspective. So the author focuses on different ideas that we can use in the classroom. Like I said, this article is mainly to prepare special education teachers and how to teach students with EBD in the inclusive science classroom. And this article and this author really focuses on 4 different strategies. And the most important one is the class-wide peer tutoring. And before we get to that, let's talk about why he chose science and why the authors talked about class-wide peer tutoring, why it's important. So it talked about increasing student science content and process knowledge is critical because in today's society, scientific knowledge is needed to be an informed consumer and to make everyday decisions. So we typically prioritize math and English, but we also forget about science many times. So the author really makes an emphasis on how it is so important to teach science, and it gives the points because it provides critical knowledge and it helps in today's society. It also focuses on how students with EBD suffer from off-task behaviors in the classroom. So an example could be talking to a peer instead of listening to directions. And this could be in the science classroom, again, thinking of a lab project when the teacher is given directions and the student's not able to focus because they're so off task. And one of the examples provided in the article was talking to a peer instead of listening to directions, which could be really dangerous when being in a lab or doing an experiment or even being outside observing something. So off-task is one of the main reasons as to why students with EBD lose instruction during hands-on inquiry science lessons. And as we transition into the importance of implementing class-wide peer tutoring, we know that he mentioned here that students with EBD lose instruction during hands-on inquiry science lessons because they're not able to focus. And we see the important class-wide peer tutoring, for those of you that do not know what that is, it's actually a teaching strategy, which the class is divided into different groups. It can be groups of 2, small groups no larger than 5. That is the main point of this strategy. And each student will tutor each other, and it happens during the regular time. These groups are led by students, and of course the teacher will have a checklist that the students need to follow. And each group should include students of different abilities, and the students are tutoring each other, and they're allowing to learn from one another's learning. So they're really involved in their learning. It could be hands-on if the teacher makes it hands-on, but the author truly talks about the importance of class-wide tutoring. And here we have a picture of what it would look like if a student would be working individually, and how class-wide peer tutoring makes a difference. All right, so here is the checklist, and this checklist was actually in the article. I took a screenshot of it and added in my PowerPoint, but this is a checklist that a teacher could use, and there are 4 phases. And the first one, I'm just going to go quickly through them. The first one would be pairing the students. The article recommended to have the students work in groups of 2. Like I said, it can be as many students as 5, but this is better. This is what the article recommended. And then we have the phase 2. Students are trained to work in peers, learning groups. Phase 3, they work for 15 to 30 minutes, and this happens 2 to 3 times per week. They meet together. And then the last one, we have the teacher work points of groups based on self-monitoring checklist. So they're actually grading each other, they're providing feedback, and this is really good, and they're able to focus and work all together. All right, my personal reaction. So, again, I really like this article because it provided strategies and ideas on how to help my future students. I'm currently not in the classroom yet, but this was really helpful for the future. So special education teachers must be prepared to provide academic and behavior support for students with EBD in an ever-changing science classroom environment. Like I said, we typically focus in math and English, but we forget the importance of science, teaching science, and how it's so important to have hands-on activities and how to truly engage students. And that helps me transition into my second point. Student engagement and self-monitoring can decrease disruptive behavior, and instructional supports such as class-wide peer tutoring, self-monitoring, graphic organizers, and mnemonics are great strategies for students with EBD, and those are strategies I learned from the article actually, and they were super helpful. But the main one, it was a class-wide peer tutoring, because it has so many advantages. It can provide students, it provides for students to work with someone else who can explain the lessons to them on their level and at their own pace, and it gives students more opportunities to discuss what they are learning, and they can practice the skill with someone monitoring them, so as they're working in small groups, and they can make sure they are doing it correctly. So those were my 3 main points. I learned those strategies, but the most important one to me was the class-wide peer tutoring. The implications to practice. Again, I took a screenshot of another one of the graphics from the article, but implementation for academic and behavior goals for students with emotional behavior disorders are highly important. We need to create evidence-based practices that will allow students to fully engage in the lesson, including peer tutoring, self-monitoring, graphic organizers, and mnemonics, which are the strategies that I just talked to you about. And then we have to create a behavior system to use during instruction, because if not, everything else is going to fail. No matter how many strategies we use, we need to have a behavior system. And we have right here the peer talking, self-monitoring, graphic organizer, and mnemonics, the definition of each and one of them, and the resources where you can find them. If you want them, you can go to them and access them. Thank you. And then here are my references. Thank you so much.